For decades, just hearing the letters HIV and AIDS brought up a lot of fear and, frankly, a lot of misinformation. But over that same time, science has pulled off something incredible. It's transformed what was once a devastating illness into a manageable condition. So in this explainer, we're going to cut through all that noise. We're going to give you a clear, straightforward look at what HIV really is, how it works, and how modern medicine has totally changed the game.
Okay, let's start by clearing up the single biggest point of confusion right out of the gate. HIV and AIDS are not the same thing, not at all. The easiest way to think about it is this. HIV is the virus, that's the cause. AIDS is the syndrome, a specific, advanced stage of the infection that can happen years down the road if the virus isn't treated. That's a huge deal. It means a person can live with HIV their whole life and never ever develop AIDS. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the basics. Then we'll dive into how the virus actually attacks the body. We'll walk through the different stages of infection, separate the facts from the fiction on how it's transmitted, and we'll wrap up with the really hopeful stuff, the incredible power of today's treatments. All right, so let's build on that first key point. What are we actually talking about when we say HIV? So HIV is a special kind of virus called a retrovirus. It sounds like something out of science fiction, and honestly, what it does is kind of wild. It can literally write its own genetic instructions into our cell's DNA. And it's a picky attacker. It goes straight for one particular target, our CD4 T cells. You can think of these cells as the quarterbacks of our immune system. They're the generals, the ones calling the shots and coordinating our body's entire defense. So you can see the problem, right? By targeting and destroying these quarterback cells, HIV is systematically dismantling our defenses. Over time, the immune system gets so beaten down it can't fight off germs that a healthy person would just shrug off. That's when you get what are called opportunistic infections. A person is diagnosed with AIDS when their immune system is severely damaged or when they develop one of these specific, serious illnesses. But how does this attack actually play out? To understand how we can stop the virus, we first have to see its playbook. So let's zoom way in, down to the cellular level. Okay, check this out. This image is basically the virus's entire invasion plan. You can see that little particle, called a virion, locking onto the surface of a CD4 cell. It's like it has the exact right key. Then it merges with the cell, injects its cargo, and just like that, the hostile takeover begins. We can break this whole complex process down into three main phases. First, there's the break-in. The virus gets inside the cell. Second, and this is the really sneaky part, it hijacks the factory. This is that retrovirus trick. It rewrites its genetic code into the cell's main computer, the nucleus. It literally changes the factory's blueprints. And finally, you get mass production. The compromised cell is now forced to churn out thousands of new virus copies, which then burst out and go on to infect other cells. So we've seen the battle up close, but what does that look like in the human body over time if it's just left to run its course? Well, the progression happens in some pretty distinct stages. So without any medical help, an HIV infection generally moves through 3 acts. You've got a short, intense phase right at the beginning. That's the acute infection. Then comes a really long, quiet period known as the chronic stage. And finally, years down the line, if the immune system keeps getting weaker, it can progress to AIDS. That first stage, the acute infection, usually kicks in about 2 to 4 weeks after someone is exposed. Your body knows something's wrong and mounts an initial defense. For many people, this feels just like a really bad flu. The problem? These symptoms are super common and they go away, so it's very easy to dismiss them. But, and this is crucial, during this phase, the amount of virus in the blood is sky high, which means the risk of passing it on is at its greatest. After that initial phase, things go quiet. The infection enters this long, chronic stage. And it's deceptive. The virus is still active, but at much lower levels. People can feel totally healthy, completely normal for a decade or even longer. But feeling fine doesn't mean everything's okay. Under the surface, the virus is still doing its work, slowly, steadily, chipping away at the immune system. And doctors can actually track this damage. They do it by measuring the number of those critical CD4 cells. Think of it like a troop count. A healthy immune system has a count of 500 or more. As the virus continues its assault, that number drops. When the count falls below 200, that's a key sign that the infection has progressed to stage 3, also known as AIDS. Okay, knowing how this disease can progress makes this next part absolutely vital. We have to talk about how the virus is transmitted, and just as importantly, how it's not.
There's so much stubborn, dangerous misinformation out there, so let's just separate the facts from the fiction once and for all. Let's be crystal clear here. HIV can only be transmitted through specific bodily fluids: blood, semen, vaginal fluids, and so on. This means the main ways it's passed are through unprotected sex and sharing needles. That's pretty much it. Now, for what's not on the list. You cannot get HIV from kissing, hugging, or shaking hands. You can't get it from sharing food, a toilet seat, a mosquito bite, or from breathing the same air as someone who's living with HIV. The stigma that comes from these myths causes real harm, and it's all based on a total misunderstanding of the science. And here's the really good news. We have an amazing toolkit to prevent HIV. We've got consistent condom use. We've got regular testing, because knowing your status is power. And then there are these incredible medical tools. You've got PrEP, a daily pill that an HIV-negative person can take that is incredibly effective at preventing infection. And there's PEP, which is like an emergency medication you can take after a potential exposure to stop the virus from taking hold.
And that brings us to the final part of our story, and it is by far the most hopeful. Let's talk about the complete revolution in HIV care that has changed everything. The absolute game changer is called antiretroviral therapy, or ART. Remember that whole factory hijacking life cycle we saw earlier? Well, ART is basically a team of expert security guards who throw a wrench in the works at different points in that process. They stop the virus from making copies, they block it from integrating into our DNA, they effectively shut the whole viral assembly line down. Now, ART is not a cure. It doesn't completely get rid of the virus. But what it does is almost as amazing. It suppresses the virus with incredible power. The goal of treatment is to lower a person's viral load, that's the amount of HIV in their blood, to a level so low that our best lab tests can't even find it anymore. That's what it means to be undetectable. And this leads us to one of the most powerful and liberating messages in all of public health, a fact backed by overwhelming science. Undetectable equals untransmittable. Let's just sit with that, because it's huge. U equals U. It means that a person with HIV who is on effective treatment and has a sustained, undetectable viral load has zero risk, effectively zero risk, of sexually transmitting the virus to their partners. This isn't just an idea, it's a scientific certainty. It's a revolution that's good for the individual's health and is one of our best tools for stopping the epidemic. So what's the bottom line? With these amazing treatments, an HIV diagnosis is no longer a death sentence. It's been transformed into a manageable chronic condition, a lot like diabetes or heart disease. Today, people living with HIV can expect to live long, healthy, vibrant, and totally fulfilling lives. And that kind of brings us full circle. The scientific progress has been nothing short of a miracle. We have the tools. We can control the virus. We can stop its spread. We've got a handle on the biology. Which leaves us with a final and maybe even tougher question, right? If the science can control the virus, what's it going to take for society to finally conquer the stigma?